is other things to make it successful? This our what vision is. It's a grand vision, but there's a lot of barriers, right?
True.
So what is your thought on if we are going to collect this massive data and everyone? Do you think that we have to create a new kind of organization or agency to manage this data? Because ERC will do a research, but I don't think going forward after 10 years, ERC will be custodian of these data at basin scale. There has to be non-profit or organization. What's your thought on that? Or do you think, I mean, talking with some of the other group, they said maybe we need a new agency department, just like US Department of Transportation, we need US Department of Water.
Right. Or it's embedded within an existing department.
Because the challenge is, let me give you a little bit. I had this discussion with federal also. So each one, federal told me, Sunil, look here, each one we have our own mission vision. I will just tell you, in Delaware River Basin, that area, USGS is working, Army Corps of Engineers, but they both have very different mission and vision. USGS more mission and vision is science-based, what is the water quality and all those. Army Corps of Engineers more from navigation point of view, that how much water is there, how much is flowing, that. So they are saying that this vision may not sit with existing, because EPA, if you take EPA, naturally people will say why this department cannot be within EPA. EPA is a regulatory body. Lot of utility will not even provide data then.
Well, I think you bring up a good point by mentioning the Transportation Research Board. We don't have, the water and wastewater industry doesn't have a parallel organization, agency to the TRB. We have EPA, which I think functions to some extent, but because it's not a TRB, it doesn't fully cover it.
It's not. It's a regulatory body. That's a problem. It's like a cop, right? Even if they are good cop, but the problem is utility don't trust. And maybe utility folks are here, how they feel. Anas is here. Anas, you are here, right? I believe, yeah.
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Right. So, this discussion I had with federal also. So say, I mean, if we are successful and all those, then do you envision that this new kind of whole data, new department under EPA, utilities will feel comfortable, or it will be like transportation, totally separate?
I mean, it could be part of EPA or it could be separate. Either way, as long as there's some kind of, data standardization in terms of what are you expecting to see from the different utilities, because the fact is that, it's really hard to restructure utilities due to the political boundaries that we're constrained by. As long as there are, like I said, data standardization and a way for analyzing the data based on the standards that were set in terms of what we're collecting, that uniformity would definitely help whichever organization is compiling all this data and analyzing it.
Right, but you need, I mean, I'm just asking you, but from utility perspective, you need to have trust on this organization so that your data is not misused or handled in different way, right? So that trust thing is the key, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely transparency is definitely key in terms of what their process is. That would definitely help us have that trust.
Sunil, I mean, this is a kind of on the edge of my expertise and knowledge, and my understanding is the TRB is actually part of the academies, right? It's not a government body, but I believe it's either called out for in legislation, or at least the activities of the TRB are supported by legislation. I know there's a water something board also over at the academies too. So I'm not sure if that would be an appropriate body to do, but given the utility analogy, are there and there's probably needs for data, are there similar types of bodies that support other utilities, whether it be electrical or obviously transportation's one, but I just don't know if there are others in the utilities or even in the other broader space. Certainly having an outside body that would manage the data over long term, it's something I think you'd want to have if you move this direction. But are there examples that maybe none of us on the phone right now know about that we can look at? And is anybody familiar with this water?
Yeah, I know that in nuclear, EPRI is doing that. From nuclear industry, EPRI collects, they develop. So EPRI is, I believe EPRI is non-profit. I don't know. EPRI is, I have to Google it. Electric
I
power.
think just looking forward, we don't have to solve it today. It may be good. One of the actions out of today's workshop could be, let's review models that exist and what the barriers or opportunities are for each of them. But I think it's actually very foresightful to look at this now at T equals minus whatever from the start of the activity.
Right.
But the other thing, FHWA for the transportation is also playing a player, which can see, and the DOTs. DOTs,
they do a lot of research and they help. They are not regulatory body. That's why all DOT work with US DOT.
Yeah, and FHWA and DOT, I mean, DOT is funded through all these formula funds, and FHWA is funded non-appropriations through taxes. So it's a little weird. I don't know what the parallels are for water. As I said at the onset, this is really at the periphery of my understanding of how the whole sector works, but there might be models that can be adopted without having to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
I just put the link to the National Academy's Water Science and Technology Board.
Oh, you found it? Okay, John, thanks.
In the chat.
I thought
one thing to think about is that, and this is great discussion, but we may want to think about having a plan for show that would end up in our proposal and a plan for what we would like to see the end result. Because I think it would be very dangerous to suggest, for example, in our proposal that we want to perform or establish a Department of Water to national level, because that's a huge lift, and we'll have we'll break a lot of China along the way.
Yeah, I think that actually is a very succinct way of looking at my point when I mentioned the TRB. I believe is authorized in statute, or certainly tasked in statute. But the overall looking forward, that if we're going to change this ecosystem and make data as a service, or whatever the right phrase is that this is going to have an impact larger than the lifetime of the center.
Right.
And here are a few we recognize that now. Here are a few models to go forward, and this is what it looks like in our tech transition plan as we go up that 3-plane chart. I think it just from proposalship, having the awareness that this is going to go beyond, and one of the products of the center is going to be this longitudinal data study. I don't have the right answer, but I think it is a good discussion.
All right. And John, to your point, there is no way we can say that our aim or our plan is to create a Department of Water. I think, first of all, I don't know what's the process to even create this new department.
But I think what we are working here is an ERC proposal.
Right.
So I think what I'm taking out of this is a very good point, is we need to show that we have given thought about the future after the 10 years, because we don't want to propose something that is going to die. And that's really the fear of NSF, right? We have heard it from some of the program directors.
Right, progress. Sustainability is the key, right?
Exactly. So I think I take this as, there are different models that are beyond our proposal, but that could help us take these to the next, to make it sustainable. And I think that's what really we need to do for the purpose of the proposal.
Yeah, this is Nelson. Let me just say a couple things, kind of as an outsider, but thanks for including me. I've been in federal government for over 28 years, and I'm also a public health service officer, which ran water before the EPA came along, if you're a little bit of a history buff. And the government outgrew itself. And I once heard an executive from the Corps of Engineers say that if you want to get something done, it takes two things: authority and money. And so I think it's good to know, who needs what data and when and why, as Felicia, I think, kind of alluded to. But at the same time, you almost have to follow, where does the money and the authority come from to some degree. And also, I just wanted to, fun fact, mention, with respect to energy, I learned that there is an organization called NARUC, N-A-R-U-C. It's the National Association of Regulated Utility Commissioners. And it's essentially at the state level, because the way that the states operate is they have boards, commissions that are a mixture of politically appointed as well as elected officials that oversee the price structures on the electric side. And so you'll see certain water companies like, say, Suez or American Water, for example, more involved in an organization than say, municipal utility.
Right.
But nonetheless, they might have something worth checking out with that respect. But it's interesting because jurisdictionally, a utility may have some waters that are, subject to Corps of Engineers. They've got EPA on one side.
Right.
They may do water, they may do power, they may be combined with gas, wastewater. They may be a wholesaler, just a distributor. It's complex. Thanks.
I think great points.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to, I think Sunil or Kathy kind of developed and actually we have it even here, I think. Some of these comments, I think, everything is recorded. We have them. I think some will be of value, in particular to maybe the innovation ecosystem, to be honest. And some will flow into some of the other breakout sessions. And I think the aspect we were just talking about even now influences both the convergence research, but also is really related to the some of the other tasks, if you want.
All right. So can you?
But at the same time, Sunil, I was maybe just kind of focusing more on the convergence research.
Right. So can you go back to the slide where you have shown? Yeah, this one, slide 9.
Yeah.
So if we can focus a little bit here, that will help, right?
Exactly. I mean, the way I've been thinking of this is imagine that we are funded. What do we do on year 1, on year 2? And then, of course, with time, we'll have to define things in year 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and so on. But really, the most urgent and if you want, easier to define, or maybe needed to be defined, is what we do in year 1 or at the beginning. So that's how I've been kind of writing, and the comment that we heard earlier, definitely we need to have a better understanding of the data. We need to have a better understanding of what else has been done already so that we don't reinvent the wheel. I think this is a comment that came right after my presentation. We need to have a better understanding, but this is more for the purpose of the proposal, not necessarily of the actual research that we will be doing.
All right.
As we're writing the proposal, we need to have a look at what will happen after 10 years so that we can kind of start directing things in the right way.
All right.
But I'm trying to think about what, in relation to this, as Sunil was saying, these 5 areas of focus, what would be some specific projects, if you want to think of them in this term, that we need to tackle?
So one that comes to my mind is, sort of a foundational issue that we'll need to get through is the issue of, data access and data anonymization, data security, privacy, all that. That seems to me that's something we've got to get a handle on really quickly as we start developing the architecture for what this system of systems is going to look like.
So, John, let me add on that. So there should be a one step, although if you go back to, I mean, yeah, Paulo, I know you are writing at the same time, but in this focus A data-centric aspect of research, I feel, I mean, although we have written there, but we can always change. There has to be one step before this, because before even we go and start collecting the data, security, sanitization, all those, first we need to understand what data we are looking, just like Felisa was earlier mentioning agriculture. What we are looking for from agriculture, right? And who is the stakeholder whom we can approach to get all these, because agriculture doesn't mean one person will have CD and they can hand over to us with data. So when we say agriculture, there is a lot of different players there, different actors, whom we should engage, whom we should approach to even collect the data. And when we say data, I will tell you one project I was doing, Pipe ID. When you go to the utility and then you say, I need data, the first thing they ask is, what you will do with the data? I will not give you any data unless you convince me what you are looking for, how this data will be used, what in the end I get. So,
I like the point that, because we separately we have a discussion about stakeholders.
Right, the stakeholders. But the problem is they are looking a stakeholder, I think, from a higher level.
No, I agree. So what I was saying is that even though we have different themes,
right,
they are actually not separate. We're not creating yet a different set of silos. Instead of being disciplinary silos, we have different silos, right? The work is really coming together, and in fact, that's what I was trying to even show with this figure here. The innovation, there is an interaction, and that's why I made it into a puzzle.
Right.
Looking, because they are working together. They're not just four different separate things.
Right.
And the definition of the stakeholders, I'm taking it from you, and I agree with that. I'm sorry. So the definition of the stakeholders is important for them defining.
From research point of view, we need to define who are the stakeholder who will provide data.
Yeah, and what we're going to do with them. Otherwise, as you said, they're not going to give.
No, right. I mean, it coming back to what Felisa was saying is agriculture community. They are not going to spend time and collect all data and give it to us if we are not convincing them how they will benefit.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it comes down to what for me. Right? This is a cool project, NSF and all those, they don't get excited by that. Right, and maybe Anas and other can add. Anas, what will convince you if I knock your door and say we need your data?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think the starting point is framing the problem. What is the current gap? What is the utilities specific problems are? And then if you say, okay, if that's your problem, this specific platform would give you X solution, but we need A, B, C data to provide that solution. That would be a convincing value proposition.
Right, exactly.
Is there a similar sort of foundational problem when we look at it from a model-centric aspect? Because I imagine that there are many models out there.
Right, exactly. So that's another thing is the model, the same thing. We wrote this as a more academic, but before data-centric, there has to be maybe focus A1. That we need to have a value, what Anas is saying, the value proposition, each stakeholder value proposition is different. Utility, then you go to the watershed, then you go to agriculture, then you go to socioeconomic. So each one is a different, so that we need to first that. Then John, to your point, model, there are hundreds of model already there. So we need to, again, should have C1. what are the model, what are these gaps in this model. Lot of models, I will tell you, I was doing one project with EPA for water pipeline. Lot of models is an academic model which utilities are not using it because they don't have confidence in that published models. Even if it is a very good journal, they don't care.
Yeah, and I think this is tied with what maybe Steve was saying earlier. We need to, I think he used the word catalog. We need to have a catalog of the existing models and maybe where the gaps are and where models need to be improved, maybe because of lack of confidence in these models. And I think that will then be the background work for the
right. And the same thing, we may have to generate new data. I'm not saying that all data exists. We may have to generate new model, system level model, but we still have to figure it out what existing model which is working, and we need to, maybe we don't need to develop a few models, we just need more validation of that model or demonstration of that model so that utility can use it.
Or integration.
Or integration, yeah, that's true.
Because in fact, based on what I'm guessing, speculating here, is that bits and pieces are out there, and
bits and pieces are out there. Yeah.
Our work would be to be able to glue them together and create the integration, building a few bridges.
Right. And the key thing is the system level. I will tell you, even within the utility, they define system, but it's kind of a system is again based on their political boundary. So when we are saying a system is the whole watershed or river basin, that's a very big system.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Can you go to that again? That's 9. So in this one, so Anas, again, I mean, other also participant, what demonstration this center should do which can feel comfortable that utilities that, yeah, we can adopt this? Is it like a piloting or what kind of like we have 2 test beds which we are planning to do? Let me give you. One is digital, which we will simulate and we can show on the web environment. Second, we want to do in the real world. So what kind of a demonstration which will help to convince utilities that, yes, just like a federal highway do for DOTs, a lot of these new material or new technology, it is not used by DOT. First, federal highway try to do and show the capabilities limitation, and most of the DOT adopt that.
Yeah, I mean, from a utility perspective, it all boils down to affordability. And how can we do more with less? How can we be efficient? And definitely, if there's a case study, a pilot that demonstrates that efficiency, then that would be the value proposition basically for the utility, is that, see, this model here would give you what you need to address all of your concerns in an affordable fashion.
Okay, very good. This is a very good point.
Right.
If while I typing you read what I wrote and you don't agree.
Right. Yeah, you guys can, yeah.
I mean, everything is recorded. We're gonna come back and have it and type this up in a cleaner version. But I think it's nice to.
Yeah, and Anthony, you are also there from New York, so you can also add your thought. Because Anthony is also from New York, and New York is also doing a lot of data integration, collecting data, because they are working with Delaware River Basin Commission also. Any other thought?
So maybe in terms, because we touched at least a few of these focus areas, in terms of the specific models that you think that based on what you use or are familiar with, are there specific models that are actually needed? I'm just giving an example here. I mean, but you know, for the water flow, I mean, is everybody happy with what APA I think has largely been doing? And I'm not saying that we're replacing, but integrating what APA has been doing. Would that be something that would suffice, or there is a need for something new? In this example, I'm thinking about the water flow model, or how about the wastewater? I'm trying to, I think the more tangible we are, I think the better. So that's what I'm trying to tease out any thoughts on a specific model that you think we should change or add or create.
This is Nelson. Just a thought, and again, it's a specific example that's ongoing right now. I look at the framework that's up there and I think about sampling for COVID and wastewater right now, and the change that we've seen in the last 12 months in funding prioritization from NSF and WRF and working with academia and utilities to solve a public health problem that wasn't anticipated 12 months ago. And you know that recently there was, for example, a federal register notice where there was a 6-month comment period to put some government entities in charge to help chair this effort, the EPA Office of Wastewater Management, and also the Centers for Disease Control, for example. And this was unbeknownst to me and a couple of my other public health service engineer colleagues, including one Rear Admiral, who's an engineer. You know, that we knew this, we figured out this was going on at pay grades above our level. But the point is that's one of the reasons why I wanted to join this breakout group, is to figure out how the research comes together and the plan for it. And so maybe there is something to be learned from this wastewater and COVID issue. I don't know.
So you're seeing this more of as a good example other than an example. Maybe we can improve. I mean, but
necessity breeds.
Right. Yeah,
that's
true.
Yeah.
Right, and we shouldn't be just looking COVID. Maybe we should be getting prepared for maybe next pandemic will hit. Then how we can do in a more efficient and faster way.
But I do think, though, that when I made the comment about, you know, funding and authority is, you know, and it's the affordability issue about the utility. I mean, it's when a company comes up with a good idea that's going to save money, it gets embraced. And side, red or blue, both sides can agree that infrastructure investment's usually something that's a good thing, regardless of your political genre. And so, you know, I mean, it has to be effective, not just to do it for the sake of doing it, but doing it for the sake of making something better. So what's
right.
Thanks.
Great point.
I think what Nelson is saying is, and that's the true right now. The problem is in the water sector, it's still so kind of a, like DOT, of course there are 50 DOT, but still 50, managing 50, you can bring in TRB in Washington, DC. We are talking 50,000 water utilities. And some are so small, they can't afford to go to DC for a conference and all those, not just afford, I mean, they don't have time and resources.
I mean, in a way, the center could provide some degree of a centralized intelligence.
Right, exactly. That's what we're looking for in the water. And when I discuss that, each federal agencies, I know EPA and all but again, EPA role is a little bit different. Here we are trying to work with EPA and with other federal agencies like even Bureau of Reclamation, they also do water. But if you look at carefully, their water is more dams and levees. So there is no kind of national initiative for this water which we are trying to bring.
Okay, I'm coming back, yeah. Well, this has been very helpful. I mean, the need for this is crystal clear. I mean,
yeah, need is clear, and NSF realized that need is clear, that there is no denial in that. The challenge we are facing is if you can go to that figure, where was that, our SODAS, Apollo, that figure, yeah, this one. The key is implementation. That's always is the challenge, is that how this is going to be implemented when utilities are political boundary. Each one, they have their own kind of agenda. So how this can be implemented at a basin scale. If we are talking Delaware River Basin, if we are going to implement, there are 4 states involved, many utilities involved.
But it sounds like at least one, maybe I'm putting together a few comments that we heard earlier, is that efficiency, I think that was the word that
right, yeah, Anas mentioned, yeah, efficiency, because yeah, if we can prove it, value proposition, the key is if we can somehow, actually when I was talking with Houston, they told me, Sunil, there are 3 ways you can implement it. The first is by regulation, that everyone has to follow that. Second is by value proposition. Third is by each one in that river basin, each utility like Houston, they feel that no, this is the right, this will help us in efficiency, so they can make their consultant and all those to collect data in a format so that it can support analysis in this platform.
That's right, but and I think as an NSF ERC center, we're basically by default sort of going for option number 2.
Right. Number 1 will be very tough sell, because we cannot.
It'll be very tough sell, but also you don't need it. It's not done by an ERC. I mean, that, because we would not say, okay, now we are in the position thanks to the ERC to impose that. Well, we're not suddenly becoming a government agency.
Right.
So really, but I think this is a good point, because also in the proposal, basically that's what we want to spell out. That's something that we're trying to achieve, is demonstrate
value proposition,
the value proposition, and in a way, utilities will follow, will do it, will embrace it once they actually see the value. And so that speaks to the value of the test beds, because that is really where the rubber is going to hit the road, where we can actually, through a test bed case study, are going to be able to show the value of this.
Right. Yeah, that's the only way.
So is there a short-term opportunity to show that value? A relatively small piece of it that we can bite off and demonstrate, look, we're gonna save you money. You just
That's
need
a good
to
point.
engage.
So and I'm going, as a great point, John. I'm going along with that, and I wonder, and I'm just throwing that as a food for thought, or maybe beginning of a discussion. Would it be wise to have an early deliverable of this value proposition by limiting the scope? So what we are doing here is a one water, and don't have that slide. So here you had a very, comprehensive from source to tab kind of approach. Would it make sense, in order to be able to deliver something soon, to look at only one piece instead of the whole A to Z?
So, I keep thinking that, Pipe ID has already done a big chunk, or a chunk of this, right? Is there a riff off of Pipe ID that we can do this?
Yeah, because the whole concept of Pipe ID is very similar. You still collect data. Now, first you need to understand what data to collect, because there are 80 parameters which affect the performance of the pipe, right? So first you need to understand 80 parameter, but that 80 parameter, oh, we have to go back? Oh, 15 minutes, okay, warning.
15
okay.
minutes.
Okay. Right. So let me give you a little bit because the philosophy is very similar, whether you do for one water or do for one chunk. So for pipe all over US, people need to understand the pipe comes in many different diameter. There are different materials. So it's not just one pipe, right? So there are different material, there are different diameter, there are different ecological cohorts. If your pipe is in Anchorage, buried in Anchorage, the performance is very different because their soil is corrosive and there is a frost loading. If your pipe is in New York, it's a different environment. If your pipe is in a coastal area like Miami and all those, is different environment. So first we need to understand what data we collect. If we go to Miami, what we should ask them. We cannot ask them the same 80 parameters because some of the parameters they don't even collect. So coming back to Paulo, your point is, can we demonstrate? It's a catch, right? I mean, because we are going not with a project, I don't know. We are going with ERC, which we are saying is we will do, every year we will do a couple of projects and all those. But how we can show low hanging, like Nelson point is, can we show at the national level, we can scan this whole COVID thing? Because each one is doing their own work.
You know, Sunil, it makes me even wonder. I mean, this was not necessarily intended to be chronological. It's not that we're doing A and then B and then C and then D and then E, even though, I mean, these are just five.
Sure.
Even though to some extent there is an underlying progression here, right? You're not going to do E before you have done at least the other one. But I'm really starting to think whether, even before we ask for the data, you know, maybe and figure out all the data related aspects, security and so on. Maybe first thing we should say, okay, let's a virtual. Okay, we'll do the virtual test bed. We don't need the real data. Everything is hypothetical. And with that, we are able to actually implement some of the models and show that there is value in doing it. All of these using the virtual test bed.
Right. So you are saying that we should do virtual to show value proposition? That's what
I think so. And then one can confirm it, but that would be the beginning to then be able to show, to then be clear what we would be doing with the data. We would be, because otherwise it's the chicken and the egg.
Okay, right? let me ask Anas and Anthony, they're from utility guys. What will attract you more?
But also, if I just to finish the thought, definitely what would attract you more, but also realizing that if we need the data to do the real life application, but without the real life application, we're not going to get the data. It is literally the chicken that comes before the egg, right? If we need it, if we can only ask for data once we have proven the concept, but we cannot prove the concept because we can only do it for the real case without the data, that will never get started. And that's why I'm saying that maybe the thought of doing virtual is not going to be as convincing, but at least we can do that without getting the data. Then based on the proof of concept, based on the virtual, we can collect the data and we can show what we're going to use them for, and then we can do the real one. Anyway, I just wanted to finish the thought, but
right. No, yeah, Anas and Anthony, what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, depends on the utility and depends on how progressive and they are. They may look at the virtual one as a, you know, if they take the theoretical aspect and they get a good grasp of it and they understand it well, they may buy in on it. If they're a utility that doesn't play in the theoretical world as much, they may not see the value, versus if you show them an actual case study from an actual utility or group of utilities that you collected specific data from and showed that value for those specific utilities in that river basin.
Right. So there are two things, Paulo. What you are saying is the virtual thing, but what Anas is saying is you don't have to go to 100 utility. That's what we did with Pipe ID. We showed the value with 10 utility, and then others started coming in.
Yeah, if we can have the 10 ones, but will 10 give you based on what?
Right, that's what we need to convince. Just like in the Pipe ID project.
Right. And there's the value of the virtual one, because right now the 10 would be hopefully convinced based on PowerPoint.
Right.
Based on vision, but not actual. Maybe example if you want.
Right, but what Anas is saying is there are some utility like Houston and all those, they are progressive, like Hampton Road. When we go for project like Water Research Foundation and all those, we partner with Hampton. And they provide without even seeing anything. They provide based on this is what we are going to do, right? So I think there are, I mean, with my experience, I can tell you there are more than 10 utility. If they really like it, the track record is there, they will come. But to the John point, what we should demonstrate in the beginning in first 2 years, I'm still struggling that in first 2 years, what you want to demonstrate.
I mean, I think from if the concept is a river basin or a watershed concept, if we select somewhere in the country, we say, select River A. What are all the utilities that impact that watershed there? And what are the current challenges within that river basin? And what are the opportunities within that river basin? What is the data that we need to actually solve the current challenges that they have? Right. And then show those two situations. This is the current state. This is the funding that's required to get them to the desired state, and then show the solution of the ERC and the new platform and say, this is what the new platform will provide, whether it's a governance structure, whether it's a new data analytics concept, whatever the new concept is, and say, this, if we collect the data from these 10 utilities within that river basin, the affordability or the efficiencies gained.
Right.
I think that would show that value.
Right. Yeah.
For those utilities.
Right. Yeah.
That would be kind of that proof of concept.
Right. What Anas is saying, that was also exactly my thought process, is that in a Delaware River Basin, whatever basin we select, we can sample that, not include all utility and everything, but we can demonstrate, Paulo. So I think that will be more impactful if we can somehow craft that this, whatever test bed is a river basin A, and what data we are going to collect, what's the current state. And that's what partnering, and they are going to talk tomorrow actually in our conference, Delaware River Basin and Miami, South Florida also, because they have worked with Rockefeller and all those. So they have all the data they have, so we can pilot. So that's, I think, should be our strategy. So I feel that.
Yeah, as long as somebody is going to buy the bait before knowing they're going to know what will be the end result, I think that's perfect.
Right. That's why we are working closely with these two. They're involved in our workshops and all those. So Miami is fully engaged. They want to go with us.
This is Anthony, and I was just, two things just caught my attention. If you are going to use an actual river basin, it would probably be best if you show two different results for that same basin. One being the normal average day use of the basin in a typical situation, and another time of the same location, but during an unusual event like heavy flooding or or maybe an icing problem.
Right.
Just to show how the system responds when you have normal and an excitation.
Right. That's a very good point, actually, Anthony.
And I do have one overall question. Should we include in the modeling, either directly with amongst the subsets or as an overall set, a financial model.
Sure, yeah. That has to be part of. Can you go back, Paolo? That one. I think there is the whole financial. No, not this one. That I believe.
I know it was mentioned in this slide a little bit under the data-centric aspects, but I know that some, not necessarily the DEP, but just in general, that some companies look at financial statements, especially break-evens.
I think that's a great point.
That's a great point. Yeah,
we might have, we might have a word somewhere.
Right.
Right. I think we need to put more emphasis on that.
No. Here it is. If you see the middle stack, financial and economic, that's a module.
Financial.
In the middle stack, those are all modules. Data modules.
It's like the second one from the top.
Yeah, second one from the top. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we need to, if we're going to do this more seriously, I think we need to show a more larger scale financial structure, especially if we're planning this to go both up to the 10-year mark with the ERC and the decades afterward.
Sure.
Anthony, just to be clear, as I'm thinking, you're talking about a financial model, meaning for the utilities, the kind of financial benefits of utilities, at least in monetary translation of the benefits, or you're talking about a financial model of the center?
Actually, a little bit of both. You're going to need to show some financial modeling to potential investors so they show interest to them so that they can understand what the benefit is for them. But as an organization, we do need to have financial modeling so that we can understand how the money is flowing and to also make sure that we're meeting certain standpoints so that we're sustainable.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, as Sunil was saying, I mean, it might be there, but I think I definitely, as I was thinking through this, I didn't have much. I was seeing them more of, okay, sure, no, there's an input, but I think having a clear, worked out financial model for that, I think would be key.
Right. Yeah, and
that could be a way to really monetize the efficiency.
Yes.